Good afternoon, folks. How are we doing? Welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk. These talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m, both here in the building and online. Hey, online folks. So whether you're in Bristol or far away, you can join in the conversation. My name is Tony. I'm one of the producers here in the studio. Today I'm wearing my favourite blue and pink tie-dye shirt. I am an Asian man in his mid-ish 30s. Let's go with that. Lovely to see you all. Before we go any further, today is Black Country Day. So happy Black Country Day to you all, or should I say, all right, Bob. So if you're joining us from Dudley, or specifically Wolverhampton or around there, give us a shout online today. Every Friday we throw open the doors of the Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Friday, where we offer people the chance to spend a little bit of time in the space by hot desking alongside our residents and our staff between 10 and 5 p.m. An especially big welcome to those of you who are new to the studio. We've got some new faces in the studio today. You want to put your hands up? Hey, lovely, nice to have you. If it's your first time engaging with us, let me tell you a little bit about what the studio is. We are a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology with everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. It's a partnership between Watershed and the University of West England, the University of Bristol, and is funded by the Arts Council England. We offer studio space, offering desk space, meeting rooms and events, and the opportunities for our residents as part of our spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. We're a space for people to take risks with embryonic ideas and to make time for collaboration. Before we go any further, a little bit of quick housekeeping. You are free to move around. Please do get up and go as you need. Make a cup of tea, grab a glass of water.
No, please don't get up and go as you need.
Go. I mean...
Because then I get the willies. Okay, so thanks.
The second half of that sentence is, and please come back with your cup of tea or glass of water is the other bit of that. Yes, yeah. Kitchen's over there. Yes, please do come back. We have a quiet space just to the left of here, so if you need to take a break, please do at any point. There are fire exits at either end of the studio, and one of the studio team will direct you. Studio team, put your hands up. Here we go. The three of us, and there's accessible toilets and a baby change that can be found in the corridor next to the kitchen over there. There will be a Q&A at the end. Please do have a think about any thoughts or questions or comments that you might want to share. If you're joining us online, please pop them in the chat and the lovely Jo will pick those up for us today. You can get news on all of our feature talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, on Twitter at PMStudioUK, on Mastodon at Pervasive Media Studio, at mastodon.social. That's a new one. I've not read that one out before. Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram. Anyway, without further ado, we are joined in the room today by Sharon Clark and Jo Richardson of Raucous Theatre, and digitally from London by Jack Hardicker, an academic and artistic director, and all the way from Toronto, Canada, by Ruthie Luff of Lost and Gone. The team are going to be reflecting on ideas that they tested and are still testing with an immersive theatre project called The Lantern Room, which is part of the Here+There Pathfinder for Bristol+Bath Creative R&D, exploring international collaboration. So can we please give a warm welcome to Sharon, Jo, Ruthie and Jack.
Hi, and thank you for coming, and thanks for those online on what is a biblical rainy day in Bristol. I just want to start by saying that this was meant to be a conversation between myself and our collaborators, but it's digital tech time, everybody, and they are working with quite a big echo, so they're just going to talk and then stop, otherwise, so there's not much of an exchange going on, but hopefully at the end we can work that out. This is Ruthie Luff at the top from Lost and Gone. Ruthie, can you give us a wave? And Jack at the bottom. I'm Sharon Clark from Raucous. Oh, look, they spoke. Hooray. I am a short, gorgeous, middle-aged woman with blonde hair. I'm wearing a black top. I wear glasses, unfortunately, thanks myopia. And today we want to share with you some thoughts that we've had on an R&D. It's a sketchbook of what we've been exploring. We ask a lot of questions. We haven't got all the answers yet. And it was an R&D funded 2 years by the Arts Council and Here+There Creative R&D. So, the Lantern Room. We just want to talk you through phase 1 and 2 of this R&D. Like I said, we're heading towards production maybe in 2 to 3 years' time. So you're hitting at us a moment where we're doing our biggest thinking. And I'd like to move to hand over to Ruthie, who's going to talk through the partnership.
Good morning, afternoon for everyone there. And I'm going to mute myself so I don't have to hear my voice, but you unfortunately do. Uh, it is 8 a.m. here. It is not 8 a.m. there, or wherever folks are tuning in. Um, and I think this is all a wonderful example of how this partnership has come to be in terms of being in two different time zones, and navigating that, not just in our collaboration and how we work together, but in the work itself, integrating it into our show by having folks join a production, a performance that can be synchronized. So, in terms of our partnership, who is Lost and Gone? Who is Raucous, sorry. And we are two separate companies, of course, that have a shared mission, have a common goal, and that's around a desire to create new work that is immersive, that is steeped in rich and bold storytelling. And that the narrative, it takes place in found spaces, or in the case for Lost and Gone, we create work in spaces that are being torn down, spaces that are typically found in and around our city. We work primarily in Toronto, but we work with spaces. We tell people we're in the funeral business for buildings, so taking over spaces before they're demolished. And Lost and Gone, we very much pride ourselves on taking an approach that involves audience agency and focuses on the audience participation, or as much or as little as the audiences would like to participate into the worlds that we're creating, the world that we're making. So very what we would call traditional in that sense. And what really drew us to working with Sharon and her team was this idea around integrating new technologies into the audience experience, and of course having this shared belief of creating storytelling in found spaces. So there was a natural kindred spirit in the work that we were creating, and the what we would call innovative thinking around how stories function in this way. And we were, the Lost and Gone team knocked on the Raucous door and said, hey, we've got some ideas. Of course, this all sparked up during the pandemic. When we had a moment of downtime, it was very much an opportunity for us to consider the future of theater making, experiential work, insofar as what does that look like in the future, and what does it look like to create right now when we can't be together. So in many ways, it cracked open this opportunity for us to connect on a global scale. Why can't we collaborate in different countries at the same time? And then further beyond that, why can't we create shared experiences for audiences? Why can't our audiences enjoy work at the same time? And at the heart of that became a question around touring, and what does that mean in our current climate crisis, and what does that mean in terms of being able to create work and share work abroad. I'm just going to unmute myself for 1 second, just to say, is this making sense? I got no feedback here, so I'm going in blind, going in dark, but unmuting myself. We're all good?
All good.
Great.
Sounds great.
Thank you. So these are some of the questions that we asked ourselves while we were coming together in partnership, is how can we look at working remotely to avoid the pitfalls of touring, which is dying on its bottom at the moment. What space do we need to build and hold for audiences to interact with each other? What effect does onboarding and offboarding have on the size of the story we can tell and the audience experience? Can we create a production solely using recycled materials as well? So there was a raft of questions coming up about how Canada and the UK can creatively make work together without us being constantly on a plane or throwing our production sets out there and around. So I just want to talk very quickly about the narrative engine and the idea that we came up with for this show. So we were looking at what happens between UK and Canada and where we are, and a lot of the work that Raucous makes and Lost and Gone makes is based in history, some kind of historical fact we've come up with that we really think there's a lot to unpick. And for us, it was about the fact that we discovered that in the 19th century, there were women whalers who worked in the worst conditions possible. And often a lot of those women sailors actually were born at sea, died at sea, and never lived on the land. They gave birth at sea, they married at sea. And so we are really interested in how we might build myths around women in this place. So Doria Sharp is a notorious and feared female whaler who was born at sea, has never lived on land. She's marooned on a disused lighthouse on a rock in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, halfway between England and Canada. And she was cast off from her last boat because she cost the crew money when she began spending more time studying the whales than killing them. During her years on the lighthouse, she studied the humpback and their migratory patterns, family and language, and she knows what they are singing. She's the only person in the world who now understands what whales are saying to each other. And we meet her at a time where tonight the whales are coming for her in a rickety lighthouse in the middle of nowhere. They're going to smash it down and they're going to take her in revenge for all the murder she's wrought on their species. And but before they come, she needs to atone for her murderous life. And she wants to summon up all the people she has harmed in some way or wronged. And the audience are those people. So the idea is that we go and we hear our stories as she's telling us to. And then the whales come and take her. Allegedly is what is going to happen. Great. So let's move on quickly.
No spoilers, but
That's true, yeah. Sorry, yeah, they do come. So we're looking at 3 acts, and we are looking as well at durational storytelling and how we can start our stories in different surprising spaces and places. And one of them, obviously, isn't in a theatre or a live performance venue. So we're looking at Act 1 is at home, and we're calling that Anticipate the World Discovered. And that will happen 3 or 4 days, 5 days maybe before the live performance, where you start receiving letters, maps, compasses. You start getting sine wave speech, which I'm going to show you in a moment, or Jack is, and augmented reality and binaural sound. So it starts to disrupt your life. These little snippets of her world, of her, start to permeate into your world. Act 2 is the live performance, and it's the moment of congregate. So it's the world explained. And both of us make work in found spaces and loved and derelict spaces. It will have live performance, projection mapping. Film is a big part of both of our worlds. Object-based technology, we call them familiars, and Jack is going to talk to those in a moment. And we use a lot of smell in our work because it's so nostalgic. Smell takes you to a place I couldn't even start to describe as a writer. And then 3, we finish it at home with what we're calling the recall stage, and it's called the world resolved. So 3 or 4 days later, after the live performance, you start to get the actual end to the narrative. You think it ended in the live. It didn't. There is a kicker at the end, and you get that through your mobile device. And that is mainly the delivery of your story. Finally, your story, she tells you your story. And it's also a wiki page on Doria and what actually happened in her life. So the idea is that we are trying to be as playful as possible with the spaces we inhabit with narrative for you. And these are some of our narrative ambitions. We want to talk about women who've been dispossessed. We want to bring those histories to light, all the famous artists who behind them was a woman who was never acknowledged for what she did. And that's what we're interested in. So our question is, what if one of the most sought after scientific minds answers the holy grail of understanding the language of whales is uncovered by an illiterate woman stranded on a rock in the middle of an ocean? Because I believe in the past there has been a woman who's probably been able to cure cancer, but because she is born into a certain class or uneducated as such, is that we've never heard her voice. So these are the kind of stories we want to tell. So very quickly, also then just going into the world and space build. This is the start of a model box that we've started to look at under the Here and There banner where we were working. And of course, what we have to put you in is a lighthouse. I mean, that's where we are. So the idea is this is a found space, a warehouse, an old office block, and you are going to go into the lighthouse to meet her. It's not as pretty as these. And we've been looking a lot at design boards. We have thousands and thousands of design boards. They're all beautiful and brilliant by our designer, Hannah Wolf. And then what we have decided to do is that actually you will, in the live experience, walk into a room which is called the lazarette room. And the lazarette room in a lighthouse is where they keep all the stores. And you'll go in and it's completely empty and bare and very colourless. And as the audience starts to arrive in what looks like a bar, it starts to transform itself into colour. And as each person walks in, it moves. And so it starts to colour itself. And we start to see a lot of glass and bottles. We start to see the sea moving. We start to hear the sounds of a lighthouse. Then there is a corridor, and then there is the lighthouse. So the idea is that there is movement, stretch, and pull between the three. This is how we think it will look in our sprint. The main part here, the hallway here, the lazarette room. These little dots are people. And we will also have breakout rooms so that we can start to split audiences up and start to tell them different stories so that they will be called via the familiars, which we'll talk about in a moment. We have also been very, very lucky in is that Camera at University of Bath came to us and said, oh, we're really excited by your project. How does Ruthie and you occupy the set? And I said, well, we don't. She's in Toronto, I'm here. So they have taken our set and they have made it into a VR set. So Ruthie and I and the team in Toronto and the team here, we can walk through the set together in the virtual world. So they are just about to deliver it. There's some of the photogrammetry they've done already. But that's being worked on. And bless them, that was done for free. The word I love more than anything in the world is free. Okay, I'm just going to check and make sure I haven't missed anything. I'm sorry, that's a real gabble, isn't it? We've just got a lot to say. And just wanting to say that I want you to remember this space here, because I'm going to be talking about that a bit more in a moment, about what happens in that space. Okay, thank you. And now I'm over to Ruthie.
Amazing. So yeah, I think getting the lay of the land of how we are envisioning this coming to life is a helpful starting point. So when we're talking about, coming into that lazarette room, that store space, we go into a corridor, which we're considering this liminal space. And then into the lantern room, the lighthouse. The lantern room, of course, being the center point of the lighthouse, where when we're talking about 16th, 17th century, where it was oil and the wicks needed to be trimmed. The lighthouse keepers were called wickies. So all sorts of fun elements there that we're pulling on to create this space for the audiences to inhabit, as well as our characters. So disrupting expectations is something at the core of not only our work and the art that we are trying to create for folks to interact with, but also just in our approach to the very minute details of an audience experience. So traditionally, an audience engagement, and I'm speaking fully pragmatically here about how an audience engages with work. More often than not, it's a very transactional experience. And I think we are all very familiar with you purchase a ticket, and that's how you become an audience member. More often than not, you get your order is successful email. There's a bunch of numbers. There's a very cold and clinical way in which we discuss box office, or we discuss, the ticket that you have for a particular date, time, even the seat that you're going to sit in. So we see that as very transactional. We're all familiar with that. We have all, attended any kind of live work or entertainment in this fashion. And then we become spectators more often than not. And it's a very passive experience for our audiences. And in being spectator, you consume the work in whatever way that it's being presented. And then it feels very much like housekeeping. When the lights go up, we automatically clap and we get out of there. And so there's this, when we just think about the container in which work is presented, both of our teams are very much interested in how we can disrupt that, how we can shake that down, and disruption in not a negative connotation, but as a way of saying, hold on a second, can we can we make audiences take a beat or be surprised or be delighted by just a different approach to this more traditional, or what could be a really tired and predictable chain of events. So we work in a space that's unpredictable, right? So how do we make our audiences also feel the playfulness of that and the exciting opportunities that come from that? So in a non-traditional aspect, how we have framed this container is really focusing on the onboarding and offboarding experience that bookends the live show. And we take I would say, an extreme study in how we do this, because we consider it part of the whole experience. It's not just the live component. There is other elements to this. And this is where we get into synchronized storytelling as well, right? Between our two audiences. One of the key elements to this is about how do we warm up or engage our audience, and then how do we cool them down? How do we drop them off back into their realities? So even in terms of when you buy a ticket, is there a more interesting way we can do that? Surely there is, right? We're a creative company. We're creating this. Like, so much work is at the forefront of really innovative thinking. How can we package that up and deliver that in a way that doesn't feel so transactional? So this is the I would call, like, the framework or the container that we're working through. And when we're talking about disrupting the narrative, we are paying attention to tech. And this is where Jack is going to come in and help explain this a little bit further. But we're thinking about how we get audiences excited, anticipate what they're about to see, so that they are set up to succeed and they are set up to be in a good place. And then it's a more lasting and memorable experience once the show is over. So over to you, Jack.
Thank you. Right. Oh, I can't hear myself echoing back. That's very strange. Can you hear me in the room? Yes, good. All right. Oh no, I can now. Good. Yeah, that's nice and annoying. Cool. So yeah, I think building on what Ruthie said there, this topic, anticipation and recall. I guess what we mean by this is it's about building a world and then dismantling a world at the end. So when we invite audiences to an immersive show, we're expecting quite a lot from them. We're expecting them to arrive and suddenly just go from the world that they've existed in their entire lives to a completely new world that we've invented. And so what we collectively have been exploring is the idea of how do we start to develop this world ahead of a physical show. And so we've been exploring through kind of a few different R&D sprints, a number of methods to do this. And where we've landed is that we are going to kind of offer the audience artifacts ahead of the show. And so there's a few different artifacts that we might give them. One is physical artifacts. Maybe they'll receive letters in the post from characters in the show. We've been exploring different methods of doing audio artifacts, and we'll show one in a second. So that's both through sine waves, which we'll present in a second, then through binaural audio as well. And then we've been exploring some AR, which I'll show you in a second. So firstly, and we haven't tested the audio on the computer, so hopefully it's coming out. We'd just like to do a quick experiment. So you're going to hear a piece of audio now. I want you to see if you can hear any words in this audio. Let's give people another go, maybe, Sharon. One more. See if you can hear anything in this audio. One more go. Oh, well, you've cheated. You're telling people now. Okay, let's give people another go. Okay, I think that's probably enough. So this is a sine wave. So we've been working with our audio designer, Helen Sciarra, and this is a really interesting method of sending people these audio notes, audio messages that they then have to decipher, which goes back to what both Ruthie and Sharon have said about making the audience active participants in the storytelling. So that's one idea of a little artifact we'll send. I think I'll talk to you now about some AR that we'll will also start to send. So this is an image actually from the R&D presentation that we did at Watershed a few months ago, which was a lot of fun. We're thinking about housing all of these different artifacts in an app that the audience will be given access to ahead of the show. But one of the things that we're looking at is how do we bring the exterior of the lighthouse into people's homes ahead of the show. So as you saw from the model boxes, the audience are going to be presented with the interior of the space. They will never see the exterior of the space, partly because we can't build a lighthouse at scale in any space in Bristol, but here they'll actually be presented with the exterior. So we've got a short video that I'm going to show you. This is actually someone experiencing it on a beach. It gives you an idea of
Ball of doom. Doing this earlier, it seems to really be slow.
Try reducing the quality maybe with the cog on the right hand side.
With the what? The cog?
Yeah. So if you go change all quality to 720 maybe.
You did it earlier perfectly. God, don't you just hate technology? What an ass. Yeah. Yeah, might be. I don't know quite how to do that. Yes, please, thank you. Sorry, can you just take a moment to chat amongst yourselves? Little joke,
Well,
a little sing-song?
I could talk for a moment about what people are going to watch. Ooh.
Yeah, great. Good, Jack. Take it away.
Yeah. Okay, so hopefully we'll get this working. And what you'll be watching here is a scene that we brought in to AR. So it's a model of the exterior of the lighthouse that we've put together. But one of the kind of interesting elements of the storytelling here is that we're playing with two different styles of immersive audio. And the video I'll just finish what I was saying there. Two styles of immersive audio. So we've got ambisonic audio, which is full spatial audio. So on your phone, as you move around this scene, the sea will appear to be coming from one direction. You'll hear bird song from another direction. But as the audience approaches windows, they can almost it feels quite voyeuristic. They can listen into then ambisonic audio. So they'll listen to these conversations happening behind the windows, which hopefully this video has a moment of. Oh, yeah.
Found her on the shoreline one night. I have wrong.
Well, that seems to be jumping around. Anyway, we get the idea. So yeah, this is just an interesting method, right?
You can't hear me, sorry. It's okay. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. What you didn't hear very well there was that as you approach these windows, you hear these intimate conversations, and that's using ambisonic. That's using binaural audio, which we recorded with Helen Sciarra. And that's a really beautiful method of creating spatial audio that is actually just a stereo audio channel, as opposed to ambisonic audio, which is this kind of full spatial moment. So as you approach the windows, and we may be able to give people access to this app at some point, but as you approach the windows, you really do feel like you're inside the room. So yes, and then this was a beautiful shot here. One of the things that we really like about this AR experience is the scale of it. So often people are used to experiencing small tabletop AR experiences, but what we did was make this lighthouse massive. So it's actually the scale of your room. And the two windows that you can listen into these these little audio fragments are, one is quite high on the lighthouse and then one is very low on the lighthouse. And what's really beautiful is watching people experiencing the work involves them kind of crouching down on the floor, then lifting really high up. And I think there's a real like beauty to the kind of choreography of the way that people move around the experience. So that's the AR. On to familiars. So I think both Sharon and Ruthie have touched on this already, but familiars are seemingly inanimate objects, but that bring kind of surprise and moments of storytelling to the show. So these are for within the physical space, I should say. These are not ahead of time or after the show. So in the case of the Lantern Room, what we've been exploring is whale bones. Now, there's some poetry to our choice of whale bones. One being that, so the main thing being that we all know that whales communicate through sound, inaudible to humans, and that these messages can travel kind of thousands of miles through the sea. And so we started to think of these bones as a way to tell people intimate stories. So we started to explore, okay, are we going to fit a speaker into the bone? How are we going to have this bone tell stories? Previous familiars, we've had things like haptics, we've had glowing moments, we've had heat, scent. But with this, we actually landed on binaural bone conduction as the technology. Too many technologies in one project. So if anyone's not experienced bone conduction bypasses your eardrum and actually goes straight to the cochlea and send messages straight through to your brain. So it's the same technology that's used in a cochlear implant. It's a really bizarre sensation for anyone that hasn't experienced it. It feels like the sound is kind of inside your head. And what we did here, and you can see some beautiful photos that were taken from the R&D at Watershed, is we fitted this bone conduction technology into this 3D printed whale bone. No whales were harmed in the process. And the audience can press this against their head and hear these secret messages. So what appears to be inanimate initially actually becomes this really vital bit of storytelling. And here's a nice picture of all of the technology that we packed into this tiny little whale bone. This is a method of 3D printing that involves plaster. And actually, one of our collaborators suggested that we could actually put ground up whale bone into the plaster, and there'd be that extra level of realism, which we all decided was not very ethical. So I think that's my bit done. Oh, here's someone experiencing it, and look, they're enjoying it so much.
So thanks, Jack. Thanks, Ruthie. So we just want to touch very quickly on notions of liveness. So part of what we want to do is they are there, we are here. And we don't want to take our set over there and just remount it as old touring goes. Like, we do the show here, we move the show over there. We wanted to somehow give the audiences in both cities the idea they're seeing the same story at the same time in the same place. Easy, right? They are 5 hours behind us, and there is 1,000 miles of ocean between us. And so we started to look at the past and the present. They are in our past, we are in their present. Is there a way that we can move an audience through time? So the ambition was that if we are to think about how we reshape perhaps international touring, or more importantly, how we think about international processes, how can I work with my artist colleagues in Toronto that has a meaning, where I don't go there every 5 minutes, sit in a rehearsal room with them? How do we make an experience for the audience where they are feeling the same thing? We talked about the idea of ghosts in the wall. So each is a ghost in the wall to the other, and that they have an equal in it. Maybe they catch glimpses of each other. If you remember that hall space, that liminal space, we have been working with portholes in that. And that as you go through and you enter the space, they are also going through and entering the space at the same time. So you see them walking past you, that you are in the same space as them. At the end, we're talking about the whole thing is made out of sail, and it will drop, and then we will see them standing around looking at us as we were looking at them. But what if not only can we see each other, is that we can gift things to each other? Can we actually speak to each other? Can we give each other an emblem of our relationship? Can we send them a note? All of these things. But we can't do it live because they're 5 hours behind us. So if I started at 7, they have to start at 2 in the afternoon, and Toronto is, way, but nobody's going to go to the theatre at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday. So what we have been talking about is, can we cheat a sense of liveness using tech? Can we somehow, if it feels like a live experience to them, therefore is it live? Do you know what I mean? We disappeared up our own wazoo for a long time on this, philosophically, emotionally, ethically, just going, can we cheat them? And if they find out we've cheated them, will they feel cheated? And I'm going, look, audiences see live performance all the time and it's not real. So we began to think about these things, and we spent months thinking about these things. But then something big happened, and we realized it didn't fit the narrative. What if you can't make sense of it? So although we have this idea of synchronized theatre, if it doesn't fit the narrative, what's the point of it? Are we just making stuff up to shoehorn it in? Why are these two audiences seeing each other? Why are they bequeathing things to each other? Is it just for our curiosity as technologists, brilliant technologists, and artists? Or will it add impact to the narrative? Does it give us anything? And will the tech just be too expensive, problematic, complex to really earn its place? We have familiars, we have AR, we have binaural. What else do you want? So obviously a lot, because we've been with a massive team, international team, sat there going, oh, I don't think it fits. And that's where we are at the moment. So we have come up, it's been really interesting in our collaboration very quickly. We've come up with lots of different scenarios where this could work, and then another artist may go, actually, I don't find that idea very truthful, and I don't find it very impactful. And it's like, okay, think again. And so we had we had several sprints, 2-week sprint last year, where basically Ruthie did come over to sit in the room with us and try and ponder this. We have not answered this yet. We still would like to synchronize those performances, because it's important to what we're trying to look at and do, which is to try and remove the onerous touring that causes so much problem in the times of climate catastrophe. And this is just what I'm talking about now, is how can we leave no footprint? So that's what we want to think about, is how can they do it, they build a set there, we build a set here, but we don't build them, we find those sets. We actually work with recyclable and recycled material. And to do that, we've come up with this idea of an aesthetic manifesto by our designer, who's like, if we want to license this idea, say, for instance, we're working with Toronto and we're trying to get this piece of work made, then we could license it, say, so Berlin could work with Johannesburg, or Melbourne could work with Moscow. I nearly said Moscow then, but I don't think anybody can work with Moscow right now. So let's think of somewhere else. So that they can do that at the same time. And then Hannah spent a lot of time going, well, how could we do that? Well, we're not moving the set over there and we're not building 2 sets. So she came up with an aesthetic manifesto between the two of us. And basically she has built this massive sort of document about this is how it should look. And these are the sorts of materials you can find. And these are the sorts of materials you can have if you can find them. But if you can't find this, then use this. So she'll say, for instance, this needs to be sale, but if you can't find sale, you can use this material, or this material, this material. So it's this big document. It's like a kind of blueprint and a template. So, for instance, with things like the lazarette texture, she's already started to put together those ideas of rope. What kind of rope? Well, any rope. It doesn't matter, whatever rope you can find. And the idea is that these materials are then returned to where they came from, or they're recycled. All of the objects that we're thinking for the room should be easily findable from people, so they can put it up in a found space and take it down in a found space and return it to where it came from. 40 minutes, team. Not bad. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, team. That was, I don't know why I'm holding this up. I've got one here. Thank you, team. That was really lovely. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions? Just before we come to you, Tom, there, if anybody's got any questions online, please do pop them in. I know Joe's got a hand up, but I'll come to you first. Tom.
Thank you all. That was quite brilliant. It's a question for Sharon. Sharon, I know your work from Stickhouse and from Ice Road.
Yeah.
It's a question in two halves in a way. One is, are you inventing yourself anew each time with each big project? And the horrible question to any creator, are there things in older works that you could solve using these methods?
Right, okay. Can you say the first bit again for me, Tom? Sorry.
Is this work kind of iterative from the old works, or are you inventing yourself anew each time?
Right, okay.
Just
yeah.
a general kind of broad,
Yeah.
how do you feel about that? And the other one is thinking about, I know your old work, and I've seen the AR piece for this. Are there things that you wanted to do previously that you could do now that you couldn't do then?
Yeah, I think, thank you, yes. We try to with each piece we make. I mean, last year we made just a binaural piece, not just, it was nice. A binaural piece that we gave away free online. That's what we made in lockdown. So what we're trying to do is each time we make something is just try to get a little bit cleverer. Not cleverer, that's a terrible word, I'm so sorry. Be a little braver, I think. I think it's about being little bit braver and a little bit riskier and to try new things we may not have tried before. However, learning from the mistakes, not mistakes, there we are. Binary in our language. The challenges we met in the work before, and trying also to put in. So, for instance, one thing we didn't talk about very much is the partnership. Is like we've built a new partnership between Lost and Gone and Raucous, where we have a whole new structure that we've put into place about how we work. But yes, what's happened in the work since lockdown is mixed reality. I know I shouldn't, and I know you're going to roll your eyes, but I have fallen in love with augmented reality for theatre. I don't love virtual reality at all, but for theatre I love augmented reality and I love binaural sound and the way it can put us in a place where I don't need to build a set. I don't like Stickhouse and Ice Road, there was these massive sets. I don't need to do that anymore because I can put you in that space using, your mobile phone isn't great in my world and we try not to do it, but I can do that and yeah. So, and then just trying to learn from past horrific times where I spent most of rehearsal in a toilet. Great, very scared. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, is there online questions?
Yeah, hi. So Ratchet Theatre Company in Devon are interested to know whether, I think they're referring to people using their phones in the images and wondering whether that interaction will be available to people on kind of computers or bigger screens. They say for those of us who are dyslexic and find it difficult to use apps, but maybe there's a slightly broader question in there as well about how you think about accessibility in a project with so much complex technology.
Thank you, yeah. Jack, can I give that to you? Did you hear that?
Yeah, definitely. So, I'm just going to mute myself. It's a really important question. Accessibility has been at the kind of front of centre of our thinking at Raucous for a while. I also teach at the Royal College of Art, and it's kind of one of my primary research focuses. It's an interesting question around the use of technology and accessibility because there is the benefits in terms of opening up access to theatre to people, which for me it's great if we live in the centre of Bristol. It's great if we live in the centre of London, Manchester. But what happens if you're a few miles out of town? Are you able to access theatre? So we see a real benefit in the use of technology in terms of opening up access and working with new audiences. The flip side to that is that as you rightly said, there are accessibility limitations with different technologies. Now, the benefits of using ubiquitous devices like phones is that we don't have those limitations of them being an accessible wearable technology that not many people have, and that frankly the accessibility is awful on. Phones have some accessibility considerations, and certainly all the work that we're doing keeps that at front and centre. So the binaural project that Sharon mentioned, we worked We work with a bunch of different people with varying degrees of visual impairment on that project. And then with this project, the project will be accessible both on phones and also iPads. But then what we are looking at is how do we open up access even further, and there being different versions of this project. So we have been working on this lighthouse as a 3D object within a web browser as well. But definitely accessibility is kind of really key to all of this work, and it's definitely something that we're kind of paying a lot of attention to.
I'll come back to you. Joe's banking question, so if you've got one, get one in. Yes.
Thanks for this. Just a quick question about, do you have any contingency plans, or have you talked about what to do with the show when and if the tech fails, and if the failure itself becomes part of the narrative? Because sometimes in any theater production, there's nothing more interesting than when the tech fails, and the audience can't tell, is it part of the show or is this an accident? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we do.
And
yeah.
those are some of the most memorable performances to watch, but also being in.
Yeah.
When it fails and you're like, what do we do? Let's go.
I'm going to just do a sentence on that, Ruthie, and then do you want to talk to that a bit as well?
Yeah.
So yeah, we did a show called Ice Road, and everybody had a Soviet speaker that sort of disrupted, and then one of them went wonky and mad and had obviously been drinking cider or something, and just decided to keep going, and we're in the middle of the performance, and it was just screaming out, "Marta, I see you, Marta, I see you, Marta, I see you," and we were just, so we're learning, but every time you use a new technology in a new form, it finds a new way of going absolutely Pete Tong. And so quite a lot of that is actually working with actors to, if it's part of the live performance, is actors to understand that we actually normally have a list. This could go wrong, this could go wrong, this could go wrong. And then we work with them in devising to kind of go, will you shut up, Marta? Or, whatever. If you're right, if it is the at-home experiences are something we're talking about a lot, because if you're at home and the AR suddenly doesn't work, then that's you out. And we are looking at a virtual stage manager to help with that kind of thing. Ruthie, can I?
Yeah, and I think it's a great question because it's what we're asking ourselves. Ooh, I don't hear the echo. Nice. Don't know what happened there, but that's great. The relationship between analog and digital, or analog and tech, right? So what we're exploring is very much, as Sharon calls it, like the accordion version of the show. So what are the core elements of this show that tech cannot shake us? So what is the foundational elements of the narrative and the experience that can happen if everything fails, right? And of course, as you know, my producer brain is always like, what's plan A through G, H, Elementa, all the way to Z. So that's inherent in our thinking, right? Of like, okay, the tech that we're using, what's the backup plan for that? What happens if that fails? But if we put the vantage point of the audience and the audience experience, we're asking ourselves, okay, how does analog feed into the tech that we're playing with, and how does the tech feed into that analog experience as well? So I think just by virtue of the fact that this isn't, a play in the traditional sense of there's lighting cues at these specific spaces and there's lines that need to happen in this way at this time, we have more freedom and flexibility to bend our narrative and bend our world, which affords us this opportunity to integrate tech in an interesting way and not be absolutely floored or diverted in any way if it goes sideways, right? So I think, all the bells and whistles can truly just be bells and whistles, and they don't have to be the actual foundation of, if it doesn't work, the show is done. So for us, it's a playful challenge ultimately. And so thinking of that relationship is top of mind at every step of this process.
I'll just briefly say something on this as well. I can hear the echo. I think whilst we've talked a lot about technology in this presentation, it's important to say that all of the technology is just serving the story, and the story is front and center. And within the show itself, there won't be a kind of overt displays of technology. The familiar itself is an inanimate object until it isn't, and it can remain an inanimate object if it doesn't work. It's not like people are going to be holding their phones in the show, and that there's loads that could appear to go wrong. People do remember exciting technology, but people, I believe, go to live theatre for a relationship with a human being or with human beings. And so I think that all of the technology is just to serve that process. It's not technology first, it's story first, technology very much second.
Thank you so much. Joe, did you have a question? Okay. Yeah, there you go. Question?
So you've mentioned how you want it to be very immersive, and you've brought up like notes and like listening to things. That level of immersion, would that affect like the amount of people that you could have at the live show if there's like a limited amount of these things, to make sure everyone gets like an equal experience and are equally involved with the performance?
That's a really good question, Martha. Thank you. Yeah, you're right. It is. I would love to. There's two different parts to this. There's three different parts to this, isn't there? There's Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Act 1 at home, Act 3 at home. And we could do that to as many people as possible because it's done digitally and virtually. So as many people as possible. But for the live performance, yeah, when you are building those familiars, they are not cheap. And you have to have lots of spares because they go wrong, it does limit. But also it limits in terms of, I don't want 400 people in there feeling part of a crowd. I need 50 people in there who are seen. So we do limit to 50 to 60 at a time. What that means, Martha, is we don't make much money. And we have to have quite a lot of funding. And we're trying to keep ticket prices really low to be as accessible as possible. I do not want to see a £90 ticket. It's just, in this day and age, it's not on. So we want to look somewhere between 25 and 30. So it just means, but you're right, yes, with that we are limited to what we can have in the live performance outside of that. And we are looking at what we call the accordion experience at the moment. We're looking at testing this by doing something much smaller to see how it works at home. And then we can operate with a lot more people, and we can storytell to a larger audience. Thank you, good question.
I just want to hold up the. I was supposed to be there, but I've got a horrible cold. But I just wanted to. Here is the familiar. I have it in my hands, but there's only one of them right now, and we need to make 60 to 100 of them.
I think my question sort of follows from Mark.
Just to remind you, it's for the people online so they can hear you.
People online. My question follows on from this question about storytelling and the attendance. So I was struck when you were talking all through the sort of onboarding and offboarding, and that sense of anticipation makes total sense. But it struck me that you want to create a sense of anticipation, but also we're cast as, for want of a better word, people who are resentful. We've been wronged. So emotionally, there's a dread or a different feeling to anticipation as in terms of the narrative. So I was wondering how you might work with those emotions that pull in different directions, but also does that connect to this knot that you're wrestling with at the moment in terms of a lot of what you're thinking seems to be about how the audience is relating to the content of the show, but is there a question about how the audience are relating to one another in the process of anticipation, and does the limit of the numbers actually help that? So what if I have a prefigured relationship with somebody else who then I might encounter in the Canadian version or something like that? So is there something in you? Yeah. Is there something in that?
Yeah. I think if Ruthie, I'll call you in a minute. Do you mind if I just go a minute on it? Is absolutely, you're right. How we're thinking about it at the moment, journey-wise, is that Act 1, the first at-home experience, is you being called to something. So it's world building rather than you know who you are. It's a kind of like the lighthouse, the whales are coming is the tagline to this. So you'll keep hearing this, the whales are coming. You'll hear it in sine wave first. The whales are coming, the whales are coming. And then you start seeing AR bits of the lighthouse bobbing along. And it's almost like you are washed up. That's how we're thinking, is that you're in the scene, you're being washed up. Then you see a lighthouse. The final bit is you see this massive lighthouse. It's about 6-7 foot tall. And then you start to go into the windows and realise that there's a woman in there. It's when you get to the live experience, you realise you've been called, that there's a reason why you're there. So then we get given our character when she can see us, and then she recognises and goes, oh, Jack Tarby, you know, you were da-da-da-da. So that's how we are thinking of it at the moment. And you are right. I didn't think about it in the onboarding, which is really interesting provocation of us somehow reaching out to somebody in Canada who's also doing that experience. Ruthie, do you want to talk a bit about that as well?
Yeah, just to weigh in, because I think the audience component to this is what makes it feel, you know, considering the audience as part of the world, as co-writers, as characters, right? Like they serve a function beyond spectator. And I think you're right to ask the question of, when we cast them in a certain capacity, and if it's a negative one in particular, you know, what does that mean for the audience experience then, between you know, for lack of a better word, consuming the art just as an audience member, but then also inhabiting a character that they may or may not wish to be, right? We've spent last year when I was in Bristol, we worked with a team of some incredible actors. We played with this role of the audience as it serves the narrative and as it serves inhabiting this degree of participation, let's call it. So providing audience agency to be in the space, but also trying to find what those boundaries of agency are, so that it doesn't trample over the narrative, or it doesn't trample over, you know, just the entire function of the world. I think where we landed is very much in making the audiences feel like a conduit for other stories to be told. And I think the immersive shows that we've been to, or the ones that have really affected us, is when you can feel useful or helpful. And so as it relates to the characters right now, and particularly Doria's character and her journey, we as the audience are extremely helpful and useful to her reconciling herself, her past. And we've been calling the audience histories at the minute, giving them not so much Ghost of Christmas Past kind of vibe, not Dickens in that way, but very much so this ability to be a figure, or be a holding space for the character to have to wrestle or work through their own reconciling of their own past. So that's a garbled up way of me trying to explain that that's top of mind, so that we're protecting both the artists and the audience in this experience, so that the audience feel useful and integral to the story, but don't feel the pressure of performing or the pressure of participating in something that they absolutely don't want to do, right? So that's a key piece of the R&D for us to untangle, and it's an interesting one to wrestle with.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you so much. We've got time for one last one. Yeah. Go on then. Cheers.
Hi. I was also thinking about your central character and that idea of being at sea. I feel like we're almost at sea now. On a rock in the middle of the sea, and for people that have been at sea for a really long time, I'm wondering if you had any sense, like, are you exploring what that does to a sense of someone's time and space, and whether or not that can be useful in your grappling around synchronicity, lag, time, span stuff? I'm sure you are, but I'll be interested to hear how it's playing out.
It's a really great question. Yeah, it is. We have also, yes. Don't know where I was going with that, but yes. We have looked at time and space, and the fact that she actually shares a rock with a character called the woman who is mistaken for a mermaid, who is dredged up by her, and they have a very difficult relationship. But yeah, their ideas of time and space changes. They've been there for 7 years. They've not seen anybody else in that time, so their relationship is weird. What they've made on there is strangled and difficult. We were looking at as well during the synchronization as who is the audience in Canada, who we are here. Are we journeying towards it together? What happens when we get there? But also, are there two Dorias in two different lighthouses? So yes, I think you're right about time and space is where we are traveling. That's what we talked a lot about, is how is the audience traveling? And then when we arrive at where our destination, how do we see each other and realize we have an arrival? And I think we may have talked ourselves down a few wormholes as what happens with R&D, doesn't it? Is somebody goes, I think Jack at one point, when I've got it, oh my God, I've got it, it's this. And we all went, yay. And we went home, we slept about it at work and went, no, it's not that. Which was Jack, I thought was genius. Ruthie was like, yeah, it's great. And then Ruthie went, actually, there's a problem with that because of this. And it's like, oh God, yes, you're right. Ruthie, do you want to talk a bit to that, or Jack?
Jack, I'm looking at you because I'm struggling with this audio and it's messing me up. So you speak, my friend.
I think you covered it all, Sharon. I don't have anything more to say. I think, yeah, that was a very unique, non-unique and frustrating moment in that R&D, but it's one that we come back to again and again and again, which is, oh my God, it's amazing, and then, oh no, that completely doesn't work.
We were looking at
push and pull has been the push and pull has been the exciting parts, right? Like the fact that we're still here. This has been years and years of us wrestling with this together and collaborating on this together, and it's the exciting part of all of this is how this hasn't been done. This even this whole concept of how do we connect audiences that are geographically separated and give them some notion of liveness hasn't been done. Can we? So then it's like, can we bend more into the narrative? Like maybe it's one part of the show lives in Bristol, the other part, the sister part, the twin version of the show lives somewhere else. Is it the same show that connects both? And there's just, as quite literally, there's just a delay in how people are experiencing each other, and it's an infinite loop. Are we smack dab in the middle of the Atlantic, and we are trying to find, crossover of times to work in that weird middle space of past and future, and then we get into some physics that my brain can't wrap my head around. But it's the wrestling with it, and the tension is. That's how we know we're onto something, because we'll make these strides forward and we'll come up with those aha moments, and then we have the nerve to say, we're not there yet. That's not it. We got to keep picking away at this. So that's what we're all we're gluttons for the punishment of this process, but it's been also what we think is probably the most exciting part of it.
And just very quickly before we finish, I want to say it's why we work in magical realism. Is because I can bend time. Is that I can go, oh yeah, look, the whales are coming and we're bending time. But yeah, we were talking a lot about the migratory pattern of whales and making up actually a species of whale that goes from Camp Newfoundland to off the Irish coast. And that we actually, as the audience, are kind of following the migratory pattern of that whale. We've done all of that. But I think, sorry, go on, Jack.
I was just going to say, I think though, it's I'd just like to say it is a really nice point from whoever that was in the audience. I can't see you, because you find these beautiful little moments of poetry in all of our thinking, and there's something there for me that has suddenly got my brain whirring around, like audio, as we're experiencing on this call, but that's to do with internet connection, is actually a very slow way of transmitting information, and over great distances, it's a slow form of communication, and so actually that is a really, I think, interesting provocation of, if you live at sea, your experience of time changes. Is there some beautiful poetry in that, in terms of actually the time it takes for information to travel through sound, the whales communicating through sound in the water, and you've got my brain whirring again, which is brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, team. Thank you so much, Jeff. Absolutely.
Sorry, just very quickly, we have a research hub on our website that talks about this, and there's loads of little films of us talking about the work in the room while we're making it. So if you want to have a look, and my hair's different.
That's to say, should have led with that, Sharon.
Should have led with that.
Team, thank you so much for that. It was really, really insightful. Cheers. Before we go, if you want to stick around at Hot Desk today or find out more about what we do, please come and find one of the studio team. That's me, Martin and Joe at the back, and we'll be happy to help. If you are watching online, please do drop us a line at studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions. Thank you all for being here today. Join us next week, where Michael Armstrong is going to reflect on the role of audiences in the media. Ta-ra a bit. Happy Black Country Day. See you later.